I think we are at a crossroads in human life at the moment. The way problems are going, none of the religions are going to solve the problems. The religions may be an enormous comfort to people. The rituals and the statements and the practices, like my friend Arya Handler, a very orthodox man, this gives a great deal of comfort to people to carry on certain patterns of life. But the way the world is going, one will have to reach beyond the various existing religions, or the existing religions will have to adapt. After all, you've had a history of violence in all the religions, and you've got it emanating particularly from Islam today.
But the Bible is very violent as well. All the texts.
You must read what Thomas Paine has said about the Bible. And yet the Bible is a wonderful book. It's a story book, it's a literary book, and it reflects what happened in particular times. But you can't rely completely on the Bible. I had a call yesterday from a very orthodox Jewish professor in Israel, and he told me about Jacob and Jacob's wives, and then he said, of course, we are all waiting for the Messiah, for the Mashiach to come. Good. Well, you see, so it isn't a question of intellect here. Here's a very intellectual professor at a university, but who would accept patterns of dogma and patterns of what's stated in the Bible and justify horrors in the Bible because it makes him a whole person. And you get that in Christianity, you get that in all the religions like that. So the religions will have to adapt. And so we are at a very crucial point now in human development as to how these different faiths will meet these challenges. I mean, climate change, ecology, overpopulation, poverty, 1,000,001 problems that exist in the world, barely going to be tackled easily by our present situation.
What's your thoughts on 2012? There's a lot of dialogue and energy that seems to be...
Well, it's very interesting. There is a mood about 2012. The mood is that there will be a step up of the human race, a revelation of something. I hope to goodness it comes about. There is this mood, certainly from the Indian Sai Baba and such like people, and it may be that something will happen to wake up the world and to wake up the people with authority in the world. I really don't know. I have no idea as to what the future holds. I don't know. I know very little about the 2012 idea except what people have told me. I just hope that it works out. You have knowledge about this?
I've got some sort of awareness that there's going to be a shift in our sort of psychic consciousness, and that some people are going to become enlightened by it, and some people are going to become confused, and so it'll be very dramatic. I think it's an evolution in the way maybe how was it Wallace you mentioned, or Darwin rather than Wallace is sort of the mainstream sort of figure. It's still humanity can't properly assimilate or accept all of this knowledge, or and that maybe is a stepping stone is to greater awareness, where we do become the distance between the spiritual space and the physical is starting to become not as more minimal, much more liminal space that we're entering into.
Yes, I hope you're right. I hope you're right. It's I wrote a fantasy story about that called The Mission, which I'm going to include in the book I propose writing. And the mission really involves, it's an idea that because mankind has done such terrible things, there is a consideration as to whether there should be an ending of free will among people, among mankind. And somebody is sent from the next world to here to investigate and reports back and reports certain hopeful signs in certain places. And so the question of free will withdrawal does not arise. And that is roughly the story of the mission. And it's a very, I haven't published it to people, only half a dozen people have had copies. But it may be something of this nature, something which we could never anticipate will happen. I just hope it does, for your sake and for sake of generations.
But you seem quite that mainstream religion don't have any of the answers, but I think that maybe that's what's been lost in say Judaism, which is what I'm familiar with. It is those connections to nature, and the original calendar was based around, and it's always held strong that the family is the core. And there seems to have been something that's maybe lost in, as you say, in the dogmas or the rituals, that's been lost from the original spiritual teachings and how they were received.
Well, I think that applies to Judaism. It applies to all the faiths. Applies to all the faiths, all the dogmas. The sense of equality between male and female is probably the touchstone in all the religions. Now, whether there will be real equality between male and female, you've just seen the Pope and his activities. I wonder I've often thought, what would the Pope say if the Archbishop of Canterbury invited unhappy Roman Catholics to join the Church of England and took that attitude? Now, if he did that, the Pope would be going berserk. But in his arrogance, the Pope is prepared to say what he said as far as unhappy Anglicans are concerned. It's, there's an arrogance in orthodoxies of all kinds. I mean, let's look at the Hindus. Until the British abolished it, a widow was expected to throw herself on her husband's funeral pyre. It was something called seti, and that was the expected pattern in the Hindu religion. And the British abolished that. It's one good thing they did in India. But you still get extraordinary things in the various religions. This idea of Muhammad going up to heaven on a white horse. I mean, it's so absurd. And of course, it follows the idea of Elijah going up to heaven in a chariot, something like that. These are figurative ideas. People treat figurative ideas, allegorical ideas, as real. If you look at the names of the patriarchs in Judaism, they're all allegories in a way. They're all, they all mean something else at the same time. But of course the Bible has its hold because it's magnificent language. Psalms, for example, are unparalleled for their eloquence and their beauty. But you have to sift as to what you accept and what you don't accept, and you don't sort of condemn everything in total. Now, I do believe that we're on the verge, on the edge of something which will happen to change the mentality of people. We have a disunited world, we talk about the brotherhood of man, but we haven't got a brotherhood of man at the moment. And of course we have the attack on the idea of God by scientists, which is not something that Einstein got involved in or people like that. God, the word God is shorthand for something which we don't understand completely, but we have an instinct that there is something there which is far greater than us, and that's a good instinct. So in Judaism, for example, you have about 12 words meaning God, 12 different definitions of God, and so on, because People are striving to understand things that are probably beyond our comprehension. And so you come back to things like faith and prayer, which are real things, and have a real effect. Anyway, this sounds like a sermon, so I don't want to give a sermon, but I think from my point of view it's been an enormous privilege and pleasure to meet you and to be able to talk about both the East End and other worlds. Thank you, Elliot.
I think part of the idea of the East End ultimately for the film is to point towards that space, like the idea of the East, and the Jews pray towards the East and the East End. So it was obviously the physical and the historical narrative of the Jewish people there, many other migrant peoples as well.
Yes.
And that also that it can point towards something more.